what does manhood mean to you?
That's a great opening question, Val. And I'm living in Georgia now, but I'm straight out of Philly. I was born and raised in Philly. And the black men I saw, back in those days, the old heads, we used to call them, the OGs that we are now referencing today, of which I am one. So for me, to be black and a man means humility, vulnerability.
Welcome to another edition of King Crush Thursday, the series where we highlight and uplift Black men, because frankly, not too many people are doing it. My name is Val Gay, and I'm super excited to bring this brother to you here today. He is someone with lots of experience, over 50 years of experience of being a teacher, a principal, staff developer, and a consultant in various educational settings. And I am super excited and thrilled to introduce you to Mr. Ron Walker. Hi, Ron.
Hey, Val, how are you? Glad to be with you today.
I'm so glad to have you with me today. Thank you so much. And so, Ron, we are talking about breaking the stereotypes, breaking the myopic narratives around Black men. This, I think, will ring specifically for you. I'm encouraging everyone to read your bio, specifically as you work around and work with educating young Black men. We know that the field is wide, but somehow or another, the media seems to always narrow the field to very myopic sliver of our community. And so this repository that we're creating of 6 questions on our way to 100 answers in phase 1 by 100 different positive and successful Black men will hopefully provide guidance for a young king who may or may not have positive Black male role models in his life, that he could come to this repository, see the same 6 questions answered 100 different ways, and hopefully find guidance. And then for the rest of us who are neither male or even Black, to be able to come in and also get a better insight into this thing called Black manhood, Black maledom, if you will. And so with that, I'm going to get started and ask you the first question, which is, what does manhood mean to you?
That's a great opening question, Val. And I'm living in Georgia now, but I'm straight out of Philly. I was born and raised in Philly. And the Black men I saw, back in those days, the old heads, we used to call them, the OGs that we are now referencing today, of which I am one. So for me, to be Black and a man means humility, vulnerability. You see, because, this masquerade mask sometimes we've all had to wear being Black men. Back in the day, we used to say, man, why are you looking so hard? Because you wouldn't smile. Knowing underneath that, you're fragile like anyone else. So being a Black man and saying vulnerable and humble in the same words, they aren't antithesis. I think that really shows and reveals the whole me. Now, I love being a Black man because now that I'm at this age of 76, I'm also at a place where I can give back that which was given to me. My father, who was a Black man who had no education, came up from the Jim Crow South, moved to Philadelphia, made his way in the construction industry, and took me out on his construction job. He asked me one day, he said, Ron, do you want to go to college? I said, yes, Dad. he said, well, you're going to have to come out here with me because we don't have enough money to send you straight. And so I was able to learn about being a Black man, but seeing Black manhood in a way that, had to always put on a suit of armor, and pretend that you wasn't hurting. And the Black men on that job would say to me, now, we know you got something in you greater than you think. You're out here with us, but go into school. Be who you can be. You don't want to be out here. And I was able to pay my way by being out there every summer. But at the end of it, I said to my father, I finally got it. I said, I'm slow but not stupid. You had a plan for me. You brought me out here because you wanted me to see what I didn't want to be able to do. And go to college was my aspiration. So, being vulnerable, being humble, being loving, being caring, being faith-centered, hugging another brother, all of that means being Black to me. And then because being also centered in from whence I come, because when I know my story, I know my power, and nobody can run a game down on me. So being able to try to walk with a correctness, and you'd be surprised, I've learned over these years how many people notice how you walk and how you talk. So, those are some of my thoughts about being a Black man living in America.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So, Ron, who and or what is important to you?
Well, I have to start off, lest I forget that the two parents that nurtured, and my mother particularly, who gave me birth, I like to say, her name is Dolores Walker, by the way. This month, March the 28th, would have her 100th heavenly birthday. And I've been so honored and blessed to be able to write a book about her called Dolores' Dream. She dreamed of being an educator. And she grew up in Jim Crow South, Alabama, made her way to Virginia, West Virginia first, and then to Philadelphia, and wanted to go to college. In fact, when she was in high school, she won an oratorical contest, and she had a book signed by Langston Hughes, who came to the then Paul Laurence Dunbar High School in Weirton, West Virginia. Okay. And so she showed me that autograph, but she was always talking about her drive to want to go to college. Unfortunately, although she won a partial scholarship, at the time it was an HBCU in West Virginia called West Virginia State, she was unable to go because of a big family, and her father couldn't pay for the rest of it. But she said, somehow, I'm going to get some education. So she found her way and learned and became learned. But she poured that into me. I like to say to people, I was vaccinated early, inoculated with a special serum. Now, it wasn't what, other than the polio shot that we got back in the day. The serum was culturally responsive literacy. So my mother used to recite to me on a nightly basis, growing up, Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. And at the time, I had no clue why she was doing it. Later on in life, because the book talks about, the poem talks about determination, never turning back, even though the steps might get hard. So that's been my go-to poem, my go-to reminder. So central, number one, to be my mother, Dolores Gwendolyn Walker. Number two, obviously, is my father. Well, it might not be so obvious to some, but it's my father. Now, he came up in the Jim Crow South as well, had no education, but learned how to negotiate because of his personality, and his wit. And he would remind me of certain things I needed to do. And as I said earlier, I wouldn't be in college if it wasn't for that challenge he gave me, so to speak. So those two. And then I've got tons of folk who I admire, that heroines like Fannie Lou Hamer, Frederick Douglass, who I learned about in college at Lincoln University. Another man named James Farmer, who some may know, he was someone who walked with Dr. Martin Luther King. And he led at the time the Congress of Racial Equality, which was during the 60s and the Civil Rights era. Now, I'm a product of the Civil Rights era, and Dr. Farmer was one of my professors. He came off the road to teach at Lincoln University for a year. And when he was there, he challenged a group of us, it was all male at that time. He said, you guys need to do something. He said, here it is, 1967, and you need to do something, maybe give back. So that challenge was a trip to Mississippi in 1967, Val. We were in a place called Belzoni, Mississippi, right in the heart of the Mississippi Delta. Now, anybody who knows anything about history and civil rights history know that Mississippi in 1967 was not a place where you wanted to be. But it was 5 of us from my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated, that went, brought food, gave food out to hungry families living on the Delta. The Lord got us there and got us back. But I always remember seeing poverty up close and personal. I always remember seeing the faces of the little kids who, because it was at Christmas time, and who didn't have anything this particular day other than what we gave them in these packages of food, So that also helped to shape me by seeing the inequities in society in the richest nation in the world. And what happens if you're Black and consigned to a second-class, marginalized education and life. So, James Farmer, mother and father. I also had a professor by the name of Philip Foner, a white man who was the residing expert at that time on Frederick Douglass. So, I came to love Frederick Douglass and appreciate his courage. So, I'm a lover of history. So there's a lot of folks in history that I love and admire. Those are just a few.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Ron, how do you want us to see you?
Well, I think, someone with, if folks who listen and see this, they say, man, he's an old guy. Yeah, I'm an elder. I think old is another term, but old kind of gives a distinction that, you definitely put out the pasture. An elder, the term elder, or, some of my friends and younger colleagues call me Baba, because it is that connection, with my knowledge and wisdom and willing to share this baton that I hold, the baton that has accrued many years of experience working in schools, for example, many years of experience in this field of mentoring Black males. And so it's my charge and my call to give that back, to share where I can share. And I've been blessed immensely by calls, phone calls, emails, texts, Instagram, you name it, from young men and young women who, want to hear something I might have to say. And at the same time, it's reciprocal because I'm learning all the time, And so I have the opportunity to be that elder, to pass that baton, but also someone who, man, he was a great father because I have children. He was a great grandfather because I have grandchildren. One of the greatest gifts I got was from a teacher who's now a teacher, but was in my 6th grade class years ago and said, when asked by some other folks, what was the teacher influenced you the most? He said, Mr. Ron Walker. Someone who I hope has a heart for the underserved. One of the things I need to mention this young man's name because it's on my heart right now. His name is Kevin Johnson. Now, Kevin Johnson, that's a kind of name that's not anything unusual, but Kevin Johnson was in my 9th grade class at Sayre Junior High School, when it was Sayre Junior High School, 50th and Walnut Street. I attended the same school years ago. And we used to talk about future, opportunity, bright young man, So when I moved from Philly to Boston on a fellowship, I said to Kevin, keep on moving in that right direction, man, because you got all the gifts that you need to be great. He said, Mr. Walker, don't worry about it. I'm going to do it. Time rolls by. 10 years later, I become a principal in Massachusetts. And one day in my office, a letter was delivered. And it was a letter from someone who was in a penitentiary. I said, who do I know? I opened it up, and opening lines in handwritten, Mr. Walker, you may not remember me, but I remember you. This is Kevin Johnson, your former student. I'm now 23. I'm incarcerated for life without parole for a murder I did not commit. I read this letter and I automatically remembered him because, we had these kind of conversations. That was in 1986. Okay. Now, we are still writing all these years later. And here's the story behind the writing, sandwiched between the letters. In 2006, I received a phone call from the principal of the penitentiary school where Kevin was incarcerated. And she said, Mr. Walker, my name is Patricia Raymer. I'm the principal of the Frackville State Penitentiary School where the inmates attend. Your former student, Kevin Johnson, has convinced me to call you to see if you would be the keynote speaker at the graduation of 200 men getting their GEDs. Now, Kevin had been talking to his teacher about Mr. Walker. I said yes. In the year 2006, now this is 20 years, 2006, I flew to Philly, drove 3 hours to Frackville State Penitentiary, and for the first time laid eyes on Kevin Johnson over all those years. He was now 40. I was about to turn 60. And we shared, we cried. Then I went to the podium and I followed an inmate who was a young man who was a valedictorian of that class, the group of men. And he said, although I'm incarcerated, I'm a lifer, I'm a felon, I may not see freedom, I'm free because I'm now educated. That was my tipping point. That was the day that I started the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color, September 2006. But Kevin Johnson was the ignition point. Now, what happened now? Kevin Johnson is almost 61, I'm sorry. And I got a letter, well, several letters, but the initial letter about a year or more ago from Kevin was from his lawyer. So he sent a copy of the letter that his lawyer sent, that the person who accused him of shooting the drug dealer recanted her story and said Kevin Johnson was never there. Kevin Johnson spent 38 years. The Innocence Project has been working with Kevin's case, and the latest letter that he will soon be free after 38 years. Now, I have to tell you too, Val, while he's on my list of people I admire, because all those years he's been writing me letters, sending me progress reports. He became a paralegal, so he's helping other inmates. He learned how to drive the heavy equipment, trained on that. And he never gave up hope. He sends me cards, Christmas cards, saying, how you doing, Mr. Walker? If he couldn't give up hope, how can I? So I always tell the story of Kevin Johnson because the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color, my organization, largely was inspired by that first prison trip that he helped to orchestrate.
So I've never had anyone cause me to cry in the middle of an interview. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. So much there. Thank you for sharing that. And God bless the Innocence Project.
Yes, indeed.
Oh,
yes,
indeed. Wow.
So it's my hope that if Kevin comes out soon, one of the things that COSEBOC does, we do a lot of interviews and national events. I've been telling everybody that listens about Kevin Johnson, and if people go to our website, COSEBOC.org, you'll see a little tab called the COSEBOC Story, and you'll see Kevin Johnson. And we gave him an award in 2016 for being an inspiration. So, we keep on moving, but he's certainly been an inspiration for me.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So, question 4 is, what is your epic dream?
Well, I think part of my dream of epic proportions would be that every student that looks like me and you realizes liberation in their education. It's not there now. It's not there for our kids who are still marginalized, still undervalued, still dehumanized. But it is my hope, and you shared some examples of what young people can do. I've shared examples because I see it all the time, that we will be able as a community to readopt that adage that we used to hear all the time: it takes a whole village to raise a child. See, because all the dots have to be connected. School is just one little microcosm or ecosystem, if you will. But that ecosystem has to connect with the societal and community ecosystem. All these other entities that say they're about the business of making sure that healthy outcomes come to all. The judicial system, right now, school is still a school to prison pipeline for many of our Black boys, as Michelle Alexander said. So it is my hope that we can break those shackles. My hope that one day, and I know I'm not any way foolish enough to believe that all the good old days were all good. No, but some of the good old days were good because it was appropriate and okay for OG or Baba to talk to a young boy, as we used to call them in Philadelphia, and they would listen. Those relationships, it wasn't about browbeating. It was about, young brother, let me pass on something, you young king, something that I've learned. So, that kind of village, because there's an African guru, elder who's passed away now, Maladome Somé, who talks about where there are no rituals and where the elders are absent, the young are wild. And I think we see those vestiges of what he's talking about in society, no matter whether you live in Philly, Chicago, Atlanta. We see our communities are not where we want them to be, where elders are respected for their wisdom, not to browbeat, but to pass that wisdom. Young ones are looking to learn. In Africa, you've heard this before, Kasara Injera, and how are the children? That's a greeting in Kenya by the Maasai warriors. And how are the children? That's how we greet one another. That should be the standard for us now. And how are the children? So I'm hoping on my watch, my dream is that we can say the children are well and thriving. The children are ready to take care of business in a positive and affirmative way. The young men are understanding what being a king means, as they're a prince now, but what being a king means, and honoring the queens and the princesses, and just valuing the intellect and the genius that is imbued and endowed within us. That's my epic dream, and that we will continue to build on the legacy of the greatness that we've had. Because if anyone who knows our history and our story, then you know your power. We were not slaves, but enslaved. Anytime you have Mansa Musa, the richest man on the planet in Africa, he carried like 100 camels of gold across the Sahara Desert. You know that we're not marginalized people. We can invent, we can do anything. So it's my hope that we see that and we don't succumb to the vices of the world, the petty kinds of trinkets and things that sort of take us off path. That's my epic hope.
Wow, that is beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. And so I think we all have heard the answer to question number 5 implicitly. You've been answering it, but I'm going to ask you explicitly. Mr. Ronald Walker, who are you?
Well, Mr. Ronald Walker, I am, a little bit of my history. I'm a man of the past. living in the present, preparing for the future. I value the past. I value the past history that the ancestors have endowed and shared with us. I study that. I appreciate that. I value that. But I also look at the present and say, what is it that I can do to make the present better? And that present, when the present is better, it prepares not only, prepares for the future. So I'm a man who really believes in the Most High, that I wouldn't have gotten this far through trials and tribulations and through Mississippi in 1967. If it wasn't somebody looking over and saying, you have a call to honor. And I want to model that call in my walk, in my talk. My father, who used to say, son, I'm not educated, but I can give you one piece of advice. Know everybody from thugs to kings and everybody in the middle. And don't be afraid to speak from thugs to kings and everybody in the middle. And that has stayed with me. And, I have had the occasions to speak with those so-called thugs who really want to be their full selves. Those folks in the middle, the everyday man, and those folks who might be the top of the totem pole, and carry myself in a way that, doesn't portray arrogance in my walk, but represent boldness and respect in my talk. So I guess that's who I am.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So here we are already at question 6, which is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, or you wanted me to ask you that I didn't? In other words, what did I miss?
Well, Val, I think you covered everything. I think the only thing that I want to give due justice to is the family that has carried me. I have an amazing wife, a queen, who is from Philly, from North Philly. And I'll just say this little story, because every time she hears it, she says, oh, he's telling it again, but I'm going to tell it now. Her name is Tony. She lived in Marston Street, right near 29th and Oxford. And when I met her, I was about to enroll in a graduate class for Temple University for a master's degree, and went to the building at 1616 Chestnut at that time, 1978. Got on the elevator, and I saw this attractive queen, and I said, hello, how are you? And she did one of these numbers with rolled her eyes and, turned, and I said, hello again. She did the same thing, Val. And so when she got off the elevator, I saw what floor she got off, 10th floor, because I had to go to the 16th floor to register. And I came back on the 10th floor and walking around aimlessly, and I heard 2 women talk. And one of them said, do you know what this brother tried to say to me on the elevator? And so I put my head around the corner and I said, no, what did the brother try to say? And I caught her by surprise, but she laughed. And the rest is history. And back in those days, you asked for a phone number, right? Not an email address. And I called her once, twice, and the third time she said, okay, you can come over and see me at my house. But that's been 42 years later. And she's been by my side every step of the way, Tony. And love her dearly. And my children, I have 4 children, all grown. Tyrone, Alfonso, Amber, and Robin, and got 4 grandkids, Asia, Jawan, Jalen, and Jordan. So my sister, who I love dearly, still lives in Philadelphia, Rita Hunter, and my nephew, Nicholas, from my late departed brother, his son. So this family and my friends, colleagues, and what I would call, Val, fictive kin. Those folks, who in the neighborhood who, I didn't know them. I said, why are you talking to me? Or why are you trying to correct me? But I'm glad they did. So I just want to give honor to all of them. And I thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I am super excited that we've gotten a chance to talk to you. The fact that I got to meet you, what is it, 15 years ago?
2011. 2011.
Good Lord. So all those years ago, which is amazing. The COSEBOC, Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color, like that conference was amazing. I learned so much that day. I remember I was still at the College of Education, and my dean, my colleague, Dr. James Earl Davis, and who's actually been one of the interviewees here, just seeing what is possible was just really powerful. For you to be nominated by Mr. Andre Robert Lee is wonderful, and I'm just all of this is just amazing. And so I just honor you, my king, and I just pray that you continue to go deeper and wider. Congratulations on your new book about your mother, Dolores' dream, and I can hope that your other book continues to do well. And just all of this. This is just really, you're the reason that everything that we've just heard is why we needed to talk to you today. And I'm so grateful. And may God bless Kevin Johnson. And I hope, I'm just going to put it out there, when he gets out, I would love to, even if this is no longer going, I will start it up to talk to that brother, because we need to hear from him. And
I certainly would want you to, Val. I certainly want you to. And I thank you so very much. In fact, Dean Davis and I are going to be talking at the end of the month. I am just honored the fact that you invited me to do this. It means a lot to me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Hova, stay right there, because I want to thank you for joining us. I really hope that you got as much meaning out of this conversation as I did. If there is a positive Black man in your life that you want to see highlighted in this forum, please click the link below or in my bio, fill out the nomination form, and I will take it from there. We are on our way in phase 1 to 100 positive and successful Black men. Success is not what someone does for a living, but the content of his character, to change these myopic narratives about Black men. I am saying phase 1 now, because as we get closer and closer to 100, like, woo, I can't believe we're almost at 100. That's amazing. And I'm so grateful. So please stay tuned next week for yet another amazing king. And in the meantime, please remember to spread love and have a great day. Thanks so much. And Ron, thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Take care.
Thank you, you too.